Hello, in this video we're going to talk about why we cough when we vape, or why the first time you try that e-cigarette, you cough and you can't handle it. And I did a video about this already, and I didn't post it because it ended up being 1 hour and 7 minutes long after I edited it, and I thought maybe that was a tad long, so I'm going to see if I can trim it down a little bit this time. But that's one of the most common things I hear from people is that they cough the first time that they try to vape, or a lot of them just give it up. They tried it and they coughed, and so they just gave it up and went back to cigarettes. So why is it that this happens? What's happening that makes us cough? I mean, you can smoke a pack of cigarettes a day and it doesn't affect you at all. You pick up one of these e-cigarettes and the first puff you take on it, it makes you cough. Well, it doesn't make sense if they're supposed to be better for you. Well, the simple reason why this happens is because vaping is not smoking. They're two different animals. You're breathing in something completely different into your body. Your body is used to smoke and all the chemicals that are in a cigarette. It's become accustomed to it. So now you're going to turn around and take an e-cigarette and pull in vapor that's got, nicotine and PG and food flavorings in it and stuff like that. And these are different things than what your lungs are used to seeing. So they're going to react to it. Your body is going to go, whoa, what's this stuff? And it's going to try to get rid of it. And that's how it gets rid of it, is it coughs. So this is a natural reaction that you're going to have to something foreign that comes into your lungs. I mean, just because you're used to cigarette smoke doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be used to anything that you breathe into your lungs. For instance, let's go back and look at that first cigarette that you ever had in your life. Back when you were 14, 15 years old, hanging out with your buddies, or maybe your older brother and sister or something. Somebody handed you a cigarette and you watched them smoke it, and then you tried it. So you inhaled on that thing and sucked it right into your lungs and blew it out. And I'm going to guarantee you that you didn't exclaim, "Wow, that's the greatest thing I've ever done. That tasted awesome and felt great." And no, that's not what happened. You took that first drag and you coughed and choked and you almost puked. Your buddies laughed at you. And, but you wanted to look cool, so you kept doing it. So you just took smaller puffs and, you probably still coughed. Or you didn't inhale or whatever. But you finished it. And then when you were done, you felt all dizzy and lightheaded and sick. And let's face it, your first cigarette was probably a really horrible experience. It probably wasn't anything enjoyable. But you kept doing it because you wanted to be cool. And over time, your body got used to it. Each time you inhaled a little bit more, and, gradually your body built up a tolerance to it, and you got, years later to where you could inhale it right into your lungs and it didn't affect you, just because of the tolerance that it built up to it. Well, this is the same thing that you're going to have to do with an e-cig. It's a different kind of a thing, so you can't just start out the same way that you're currently using a cigarette. You're going to have to sort of do the same thing that you did when you first started that cigarette. So let's talk about what makes you cough, what it is that's actually making you cough. And in vaping, what we call it is throat hit. And that's that feeling you get in the back of your throat when you inhale it and exhale it. It's that burning sensation, that kick that you get, and it makes you want to, you want to cough. So various things are going to affect that throat hit. And one of them are going to be technique. That's going to be how you draw the air and vapor in and let it back out. And next, one of the most important things is going to be nicotine level. You know, how high is that nicotine level? The more nicotine that you're drawing in, that irritates your throat, and that's going to make you cough. And then you're going to have what your fluid is made up of, which is either PG, VG, or a mix of PG, VG. Most of them are going to be a mix. And then you're going to have the power level. You know, how hot your coil gets, because these are vaporizers, so it's just a coil that's inside there. So we'll break them down one by one, and we'll talk about what they do and what you can do to minimize the effects. Okay, the first thing we're going to talk about is technique. And this is basically how you're going to draw the vapor into your lungs. You know, how you're going to do it with an e-cig versus how you're going to do it with a regular cigarette. The majority of the people that smoke, you know, regular cigarettes, they've gotten so used to it that they just put the cigarette in their mouth and they just draw that right into their lungs, and then they exhale it. And they've gotten so used to doing this with a cigarette that it has no effect on them, and they can do it. I mean, especially with whatever cigarette they're used to doing it with. Now, if you do that with an e-cig, because it's different, it's not cigarette smoke. This is vapor and nicotine and fluid, and it's different, and like I said before, your lungs are going to know the difference, and they're going to react to it, so they need that time to build up to it, so you're not going to want to do that. But this is what most people are going to, they're going to get an e-cig like this, but your first instinct is going to, because it feels like a cigarette and it looks like a cigarette, it's a little bit heavier, but your first instinct is going to be to pick this up and draw on it like a regular cigarette, and this is what you're going to do. And see, that even made me cough, and I've been doing this like 6 months. So that's not the way you want to do this. That's the wrong technique for an e-cig. It might work fine on a cigarette, now that you're used to it, but remember that first cigarette you had, you couldn't do that. That first cigarette that you smoked, once you did that the first time and hacked your lungs out, you started puffing on it. And that's what you have to do with these. It's kind of like smoking a cigar. You're going to take puffs on it, and then you're going to breathe it in. My suggestion to start with, just to get used to it, is to just take some puffs and draw them in your mouth. It's more like sucking on a straw than it is smoking a cigarette. Don't really, try not to think of these as smoking. Because, like I said, this is vaping, it's not smoking. It's not the same thing. Think of it more as sucking on a straw from like a soda or a milkshake, and you're just going to suck it into your mouth. But instead of swallowing it, you're going to take a breath after, you know, you fill your mouth up. But I would say to begin with, don't even breathe it in. Just take some puffs on it and get used to that action, you know, of sucking it in your mouth and letting it out. I mean, you don't got to do that for a long time. You know, just do it for a few minutes or however long it takes for you to just get used to that feeling. Because it's going to take a while to kick that sucking it right into your lungs habit, because you've done it for so long. So just, you know, just experiment with that, you know, just so you can get the feel of it and what you're trying to do. And after you get an idea of how that's going to work, then, you know, take a puff on it and draw it into your mouth, and then go ahead and just take an easy breath in. You know, just breathe it in and breathe it right back out. See, that didn't bother my throat at all. I breathed it in, pushed it out, was nice and smooth, you know, no problems at all. It all just in technique. I mean, it's just the difference in how I drew the vapor into my lungs. Okay, the next most important thing that we're going to talk about is the nicotine level. And this is one of the things that most of the people, they don't have any idea about it when they go to get one of these, especially if they go get a disposable or something, or, they get one of these kits, and they, the little e-cig kits, and they really don't know what the nicotine is, or they don't know what strength they should have, and they'll say it on the bottles. When you get the bottles, they'll have them on here, like, so here's, I don't know how well you're going to see these on my little crappy webcam, but here's one that, it's 6 milligrams. And that's low. That's about as low as you can get before you go to zero. And you can get no nicotine. They do have zero nicotine flavors. Not every place, but if you're going to a good shop or something, or ordering online, you can get zero nicotine. It's just flavoring. And then they have an 11 milligram. And then I have one that's a 16 milligram. And then some of these smaller bottles I have, and this is what came with my kit when I got it, my little e-cigarette kit. You'll never see this on the bottle because it's so teeny, tiny, 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 tiny. But it's 1.8%. So they're either going to come in milligrams or they're going to come in a percentage. And they go from 0 milligrams, which is no nicotine, but they're usually going to start around 6 milligrams. And they're going to go up to, I think the highest is like 32 milligrams. And I don't know how you could do a 32 milligram. You would have to be a big boy. I mean, I couldn't take it. There ain't no way. That would be so strong. But normally they're going to go like 6 milligram, and then they're going to go up to like 11 or 12 milligram, and then they're going to go up to like maybe a 16 or 18 milligram. Then you're going to have a 24 milligram, and then you're going to have the 32 milligram, which is going to be the top of the scale. And what this is the milligram is going to be how much nicotine there is per milliliter of fluid that's in that bottle. So if you have an 11 milligram nicotine level, then that means there's 11 milligrams of nicotine per milliliter of fluid in that bottle. And that's your ratio. So, like, let's say the one that I had that was 1.8%. With the percentages, you just move the decimal point over one, and then that gives you the milligrams. So a 1.8% is 18 milligrams. You just move that decimal point to the other side of the 8, and it's an 18 milligram, which is kind of strong. And that's, when you're getting, like that kit that I got, it came with 18 milligram fluid, and that's pretty strong for a beginner. I mean, I would really suggest starting out with 6 milligrams. Is what I'm trying to say is the higher the nicotine level, the bigger that throat hit's going to be. So if you're starting out with the wrong nicotine level, that's going to hurt your throat. So if you went out and bought one of these disposables or one of these kits, and I went out and bought a disposable not long ago to do a test on it because I wanted to see how long they lasted for another thing I did on my webpage. But when I tried this thing, oh my God, the throat hit was just insane. I mean, I coughed, and, I let my girlfriend try it, and she did the same thing, and it was just, I was like, holy moly, that's, that kicks harder than my other one. And I got to looking at the box, and here it comes to find out that these disposables, they come in 24 milligram. 24 milligram. That's the next highest, or the next lowest you can go from the highest. There's 32, and then it drops down to 24. So the first e-cigarette that you're picking up to try out from, this counter at Walgreens or whatever, is 24 milligrams, and you're going to take that home and suck that in straight into your lungs like a cigarette, and you are going to cough. I will guarantee it. Even if you do the puff into your mouth, like, I was talking about in the technique section, you're still gonna cough, because it's 24 freaking milligrams of nicotine. Way too high for a beginner. Way too high for a beginner. Okay, really quick, let's talk about e-juice or fluid. There's not really much to it, but it will affect your throat hit and cough, depending on what it is. And basically is what the fluid is it's going to be made up of either 2 to 5 components. You know, there's really not much in it. You know, for most of them, you're going to have PG, which is propylene glycol. You're going to have VG, which is vegetable glycerin. And you're going to have your nicotine. You're going to have flavoring. And in some of them, you're going to have some kind of a food dye or something if it's colored. Some of them are going to be less than that. Like, say if you get a really high-quality VG liquid with no nicotine, it may only have VG and flavoring in it. That might be it. There might not be any dye or anything in it. And you can either get, I haven't seen it very often, but I know you can get it. They have pure PG fluids, which are just going to be PG nicotine and flavoring. And this is going to be really thin. PG is very, very thin, and it has a harder throat hit. But it seems to carry flavor better. I'm not sure if the throat hit from PG is from the PG itself has a harder throat hit, or if because it carries flavor better, maybe it carries nicotine better. And that's giving you the harder throat hit. I don't know one way or another because I'm not a chemist. It could be just VG itself creates some kind of a throat hit. And then you can get some of your higher end fluids you can get that are VG only, 100% VG. And this is just going to be straight vegetable glycerin and some flavoring and maybe food dye and nicotine. And these are thick. I mean, this stuff is almost like syrup. Pure VG is pretty thick. And it tends to have less of a throat hit, and but it has more muted flavors, but it's going to produce a lot more vapor. VG tends to produce more vapor than what PG does. Now, most of your fluids that you get are going to be a combination. They're not going to be one or the other. They're going to be PG and VG. So it's going to be like maybe a 70-30 mix or a 60-40 mix or something like that. They're going to have PG and VG in them to kind of mix it up so they're not too thin and not too thick. You know, and also so it carries that flavor better, you know, than what a straight VG would or something. And so that's gonna affect your throat hit a bit. And then the other thing is some of these e-juices are just so cheap and nasty that they're gonna make you cough. I don't care what you do with it. You know, I don't care what the nicotine level is. You know, it's just disgusting. You know, if you get your hands on a really nasty e-juice, and you're bound to do it sooner or later, it's going to make you cough just because it's horrible. So, you know, stick to a quality fluid. And I would say to, you know, if you're wanting to reduce that cough, find something that has a higher VG level in it, or pure VG, a good quality fluid, and a low nicotine level. And that's what you're looking for in a fluid. And something I want to say real quick is I mentioned the components in it, and I said the word propylene glycol, and a lot of people are going to freak out because they've heard this or seen it on the internet or whatever, and they're thinking, oh my God, that's antifreeze. I'm not going to inhale antifreeze. Propylene glycol is not antifreeze. Antifreeze has propylene glycol in it, but that's not its main ingredient, and that's not the toxic ingredient. Is what makes antifreeze toxic is it has methanol in it, and it has ethylene glycol. And methanol is basically wood grain alcohol. I mean, it's what they run in race cars. So, yeah, that's toxic. And then ethylene glycol is a compound that's fairly close to propylene glycol, but it's much more toxic. whereas propylene glycol is not toxic. Propylene glycol is perfectly safe. It's FDA approved, it's medical approved, they use it in everything. I mean, it's in preservatives, it's in food, it's in inhalers. You know, like if you look at your asthma inhaler, there's probably a pretty good chance that it's propylene glycol and albuterol. That's probably what's in it. That's what's used as the carrier. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with propylene glycol. Don't listen to a word these people say. They're idiots. They didn't do the research. All they did was look at the components on antifreeze and said, oh, propylene glycol's in it and this is toxic and it'll kill you. Well, it's got water in it too. Water's not going to kill you. You know, that's not the part that kills you. They're just adding that in there to make it thicker, and it also helps the boiling point. So don't listen to them. Just take my word for it. Trust me, you are not inhaling antifreeze. Propylene glycol is perfectly safe. Okay, and the last thing that is going to affect your vape or your throat hit or what's going to make you cough is going to be the amount of amps that get drawn off your device. Basically how hot the coil is going to get. And this is going to depend on a couple things. With an unregulated device, it's going to be either the resistance of the atomizer, or it's going to be the output voltage of the device. Well, most of the devices, whether it'd be like a mechanical like this, or your little e-cig battery, or an Ego style battery, they're all pretty much 3.7 volts is what they run at. So basically is what you can think of is a light bulb. You know, like say you take a 40 watt light bulb and you screw it into a light socket, it's going to give you X amount of light because it's drawn X amount of current. You unscrew that and put a 60 watt light bulb in there, and it's going to be brighter, and it's going to be hotter, and it's going to draw more current. You take that out of there and screw a 100 light bulb in there, a 100 watt light bulb, and it's going to be even brighter yet and draw more current. And that's exactly how these work. The lower the ohm is of your tank or your cartomizer or your atomizer, the hotter that's going to get, and the more vapor it's going to create, and the more vapor it creates, the more throat hit you're going to get. So, pay attention to what you're screwing onto these when you're going out and buying tanks or cartomizers or whatever. You're not going to want to buy that super low. If you're having trouble with coughing, and stuff like that, don't go get a 1.5 dual ohm cartomizer because it's going to be too much. So, for a summary, what are my conclusions and suggestions? What would I recommend for a new vapor, to help them stop coughing? Number one is technique. Do not inhale on this thing like it's a cigarette, because you are going to cough. I can almost guarantee it. If you're not used to it, you're going to draw that right into your lungs, and the nicotine level's probably going to be too high. It's going to be too hot. You're going to draw in too much vapor, and your lungs aren't going to like it, and it's going to make you cough. That's just how it works. So puff on it into your mouth and then inhale it, like I showed. And I think it'll work for you. I think it'll be much more enjoyable. If it's still too much, then we're looking at nicotine level. Your nicotine level's too high. If you went out and bought a kit, or you went out and bought one of those disposables or whatever, and it's making you cough, well, there's a really good chance that your nicotine level is, like 18 to 24 milligrams, and it's just too much to take as a beginner. You're going to have to find something with a lower nicotine. Fluid, you get quality fluid. Don't buy some cheap, nasty crap. And price isn't always an indicator. I've had some really good fluid that was $5 a bottle. And I've had some fluid that sucked for $10, $15 a bottle. So that's not always the case. I mean, it's what you really want to do is you want to go try some out. You know, you want to try them fluids out and see what feels good to you and what you like. Look for something that has a higher, VG level in it. That's going to help reduce the throat hit. Again, a lower nicotine level. You're not going to want a pure PG liquid with a high nicotine level because that's going to give you that throat hit. That's just going to make it that much worse, and it's going to make you cough. Power. Don't get a low ohm coil. If you have trouble with these things making you cough, then you're going to have to find a way to know what you're getting ohm-wise on your cartomizers. Don't be using a 1.5 dual ohm coil. It's going to be too hot, and it's going to make you cough. This is what I really suggest somebody does. This is pretty much what I tell everybody, and what I really feel strongly in my heart is what you need to do, is you need to find a good vapor shop. Don't go pick something up at 7-Eleven, one of these disposables. Don't go to your local smoke shop that dabbles in e-cigs. I mean, if they know what they're doing, that's fine, but if they just dabble in these things and they don't really know what they're talking about and they got very limited selection, then don't waste the time. Take the time, find a really good shop in your area, even if it's not in your area, and you got to drive a ways to, 50, 60 miles or something. It's worth it to me, to go down there, find somebody that has, a lot of product, that you can look at, that has different flavors you can look at, different nicotine levels, and hopefully they have some knowledge and that are willing to work with you. And go in there and tell them. Be honest with them about what you're trying to accomplish. If you have a budget, be honest with them about your budget. They will normally work with you. These people, they want you to get into vaping. They want you to quit smoking. They want you to be a return customer. They're not going to try and sell you the most expensive thing in the shop and try to rip you off. It's not going to happen. And they're also not going to sell you the cheapest piece of crap. They're not going to go in there and sell you one of these little cheap, crappy e-cigs for 50, 60 bucks because they know they don't work that well. So they're going to try to get you into something else. So go in there and try these different devices. Let them help you. Ask the questions, listen to them. Try some different flavors, try some different nicotine strengths. I really suggest starting at 6 milligrams. Try some variable voltage devices. I really recommend, don't get any of these unregulated, like a stick sig or the ego kits and stuff like that, because the prices aren't that much cheaper. Look at, at the very least, a variable voltage device like a Ego Twist or iTaste VV or some of the other models like that have a variable voltage, and they will let you adjust that voltage depending on what tank that you put on it, or what kind of fluid you put in it. It gives you that adjustability. And the prices are not that much different. I mean, you're still talking, for like a Ego Twist kit, $70, $80. So it's not like you have to spend $150, $200 to get into this. So go in there and look around and be informed and let them help you. Don't order a bunch of crap off the internet and get it home and not know for sure if it's going to work, and then you got to figure all of it out and all this. It's a hassle, and it's either, it might work, it might not work. Go into a store, let them do it, let them help you figure it all out, and you will walk out the door vaping. They will set it up. They'll show you how to fill the tanks. They'll show you how to adjust it. The whole bit. It'll be in your hand. You'll be walking out to your car puffing on this thing. And I can almost assure you you'll be happy with it. So, that's what I had to say on it, and I think this probably ran longer again than what I wanted, but hopefully it wasn't the hour and 7 minutes that the last one was. And I'm sorry if it ran long, but I'm really passionate about this, and I I hate to hear when somebody, you know, says that, you know, they tried it and they quit and it was over something simple, like, you know, they didn't understand the technology, or, you know, they were coughing and they didn't understand why, or how to get around it, you know. So, you know, I hope I helped, and I hope this makes your journey into vaping better. And if you have any questions or comments or anything like that, feel free to contact me. This is probably going to be up on YouTube, and you can leave a message on YouTube. I'm going to probably put it on my website. I have a website for beginning vapors that has a beginning guide with several pages that covers devices and tanks and how it all started. You know, it's very interesting. It's long, like everything I do. You know, it's probably 6-7 pages worth of stuff, but it's worth a read, in my opinion, if you're new. So I'll put a link to that or something in the description to this, and you can go ahead and check that out. And thank you very much for watching the video, and I hope you have a good time. Thank you.